Last year, April 2025, we decided to take some of our Pinterest position, cut it down, and purchase Reddit. Reddit has been a public company for 2 years now. We're going to discuss where are they now? Can Reddit thrive after the software apocalypse and AI assault? And we'll talk about some of their valuation notes.
Quick shout out for Semi Insider, which you can find over on shipstockinvestor.com. If you like our YouTube videos, you'll love our new research platform. That's where you can find all of our research reports on the companies that we own. We discuss with our community, buys and sells that we're making in our portfolio, and we're in the early stages of building out a suite of investor tools using the methodology we like here, taking a look at industries, their supply chains, who's who, and trying to figure out who has the most staying power and the most upside long term.
Once again, you can find all of that over at chipstockinvestor.com. Check it out and hit that subscribe button while you're at it. Now, before we jump into how things have been over the last 2 years, there was a lot of excitement about AI licensing, training AI models or large language models on Reddit content. How is that panning out?
It continues to be a nice little sidecar business for Reddit. Quick look at the annual report from 2024 and the updated one for 2025. Fundamentally, this description is unchanged. Reddit continues to license out user content. For all of you social media fans out there, this is a thing, not just with Reddit, but any social media platform. Your content that you upload for free is getting used to strengthen the businesses of big tech. Probably not a revelation, but anyways, just something to be mindful of. Reddit continues to make money off of this, proving that once again, the best use case for AI thus far is selling ads, making sure your eyeballs stay glued to your device so that the value of ads continues to increase. What does that mean for Reddit specifically?
Taking a look at the revenue breakdown for Reddit. In blue, that's advertising revenue. You can see in the year ending December 2025, over $2 billion in advertising revenue. And then in orange, other source revenue, that's AI licensing, amongst other things, only $140 million. So it's a very small portion of Reddit's business.
So back to that advertising revenue. That is where the money is really being made right now. Digital ads. And like any good internet communications business, Reddit provides some looks at their daily active users or daily active uniques, DAUQs, and weekly active uniques. Especially on the weekly active users over the last year, they've continued to notch really significant growth, nearly 472 million average uniques to close out 2025, with a lot of that growth as of late, especially coming from international markets outside of the United States. Nice continued scaling of this business and helping build something of a network effect for Reddit.
Now, in comparison to some of the other big players in this space, Alphabet and Meta, Reddit is a very small player. And this does cause some investor concern because Reddit is dropping some of these metrics in their reporting. The logged in user versus the logged out user metric growth is going away later in 2026. Why is that important? Of course, a person that is logged into Reddit is much more valuable than someone that is logged out. So what does that mean for Reddit? Does that mean that the platform is losing steam? Well, it could be, but it also could be that as this business grows, removing some of these metrics just makes sense. It's similar to when Netflix removed their paid memberships.
Yeah, hard to believe that Netflix removed that a year ago. And they've been, for the most part, okay since then. Some of their more recent turbulence has nothing to do with the membership metrics. But back to the part on the network effect. Overall, Reddit continues to add more users, both in the US and internationally. And that's only one side of the equation, though. Adding those users only means so much to an advertiser. Reddit needs to build more tools for those advertisers to add meaningful, targeted ads that help generate them revenue. And that's where Reddit is currently spending a lot of its effort right now, is unlocking the value of that network that it's building. So how we like to illustrate this oftentimes here at CSI is the strength of the platform and how the product, the user-facing actual software, social network, gets stronger as more data, or in this case, content gets added to it. And that's what helps attract advertisers and increases ad revenue for Reddit. So there's a lot of moving parts underneath the hood that can help drive that revenue. And so we think this is just simply Reddit migrating investors towards that more mature looking metric, just good old fashioned revenue and revenue growth rather than just what the subscribers are doing.
And that revenue growth was 70% year over year in this most recent quarter. And their outlook is 53% year over year revenue growth for Q1 2026.
I'd say that's pretty good.
Not bad. We just mentioned moments ago about some of the huge players that Reddit's competing against for eyeballs. Meta, Google, Amazon, YouTube, you name it, they're competing against that. And this is still very much an issue for Reddit.
Yeah, and going back to some of those user metrics, that is where the concern rightfully is coming in, is if there is a slowdown taking place because competition is mounting, user content getting supercharged with AI on other platforms, including here on YouTube, on X, and so on and so forth, not having that visibility on the user growth might remove the ability for investors to know if an imminent slowdown is right around the corner.
And all of these platforms are advertising platforms.
They all use AI, ultimately, at the end of the day, to try to keep your eyeballs glued to the screen so that they can earn more ad sales.
And in software, the name of the game is always constantly adding more features, which costs a lot of money. It gets very expensive. And one of the reasons that it's so expensive is because of the engineers that develop the software. And to get top tier talent, you need to pay those engineers. And that's where stock-based compensation often comes into play with a growing software company.
This is where our primary concern now comes into play with Reddit. It's not just a potential slowdown in user growth. It's not just a potential slowdown in revenue as Reddit starts to bump into some of the bigger internet companies. It's all of that paired with the stock-based compensation, which was, again, quite high in 2025.
Yeah, in fact, it was 16% of revenue in 2025. We would definitely like to see it come down to around 10%, but that is not going to happen according to management in 2026. The good news in all of this is that free cash flow on a per share basis, which takes into account stock-based compensation, is actually still in growth mode. Here at the end of 2025, free cash flow per share in orange, $3.39. Free cash flow, $684 million for the year.
Yeah, and that is the result of positive operating leverage at this early stage as Reddit ramps up those advertising-based revenues. However, with stock-based compensation still quite high, if the business's revenue does decelerate throughout 2026 and into 2027, that dilution from stock-based comp could become more of a problem. So that's what we are keeping a close eye on. However, Reddit management is perhaps nipping this in the bud, maybe just a bit. They did announce that $1 billion share repurchase program. It's not going to completely offset the dilution from that stock-based compensation, but the idea is it will offset most of it. Ideally, though, as the business matures, we want to see the opposite happen. If revenue does decelerate as we exit 2026 and enter 2027, a year from now, we would like to see a stock buyback program actually shrink the share count, not just offset dilution.
Let's talk a little bit more about valuation. We ran a reverse DCF based on this free cash flow per share. In line with that, we wanted to do some calculations on the valuation for the current stock price. And we used our new discounted cash flow calculator, which you can find on Semi Insider. Let's take a look and drill down a little bit more here and see what kind of free cash flow per share growth is baked into the stock price, which when we are recording this video is around $140 or $24 billion in enterprise value.
And just as a reminder, this is a reverse DCF. These are not growth rates that we expect Reddit to put up. This is just one scenario that we arrived at that gets Reddit at fair value today based on the current stock price of around 145 bucks per share. So we are using free cash flow per share of $3.39 in 2025. We plugged in average growth rate of 22% for the next 5 years. What that means is obviously years like 2026, that free cash flow per share growth rate should be very high if revenue is at 50% or more. But in the subsequent years, it will decrease below that. And then our terminal growth rate of 5% thereafter. That's what gets us at fair value today. The job of you and I as investors is now to decide if that's a reasonable hurdle for Reddit to clear. And if you do, maybe it's a decent addition at this particular point in time.
Head on over to chipstockinvestor.com to get a look at Semi Insider, join the conversation. And we mentioned Netflix earlier in the video. They've got a pending acquisition of Warner Brothers Discovery, and they've changed up their metrics a little bit as well. Take a look at this video that we did on Netflix. Is Netflix stock dead money? Check it out now.